Well, Chester, my 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 neighbor, Chester became a photographer, and Mr. Pope was a college official photographer. He had a well-known reputation, and he began to mentor Chester in photography. And Chester ended up working at the New York Times, I think for 35 years. Chester's father, by the way, was his biological father was the editor of Jet magazine, and but Chester wrote several books. He traveled to Africa, traveled all over, and he published quite a few publications. And about 8 months ago, Chester was named to the Photographers Hall of Fame in St. Louis, which Brady Hansel, famous, world famous historical photographers belong to this Hall of Fame, and that was a tremendous achievement on his part. Some of my classmates were Lionel Richie, and that's where they formed the Commodores. And being editor of the paper gave me entree into getting into events and places that I otherwise wouldn't have. And so their first public performance, I was in the front row in probably seat number one, and their mentor was the dean of men, and they were known at that time as the Jays. And I remember he introduced them. They were going to be going places, and they put on a show. I had classes with those guys. Also, Tom Joyner, who ended up being a famous DJ called a Fly Jock, because he did this unusual thing where he had a show in Dallas and a show in Chicago, and he flew every day. I forget how many years from one place to the other, and he was known as the Fly Jock. He started out playing records at lunchtime in our cafeteria. He had a little booth there, and he would play records, and that's how he got his start. And he ended up, I think, selling his syndication for something like $50 million or something like that. We had a lot of famous people came through. Dionne Warwick, Patti LaBelle. The name of the group back then was called LaBelle. Lots of folks, and again, because of my position as an editor, I got a chance to meet them all firsthand, personally, not only just hello basis, but having time to have conversation with them, getting autographs, and it was quite interesting. I remember the night when Martin Luther King was assassinated, that we went on town and we rioted. It was on the news, on television, and my grandparents, they saw it, and they were concerned, and they called, and they said, "Were you there?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Were you were you damaging stuff?" I said, "No, I couldn't find any bricks." But we had another occasion where the board of trustees at Tuskegee were primarily white, and that didn't go very well with the students, and some of these students belonged to SNCC, which was very well known Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Uh, is written throughout Black history, and they actually kidnapped, well, not kidnapped, I'll say retained the members of the board, and until they agreed to make certain changes to the operation of Tuskegee. I forgot all about that. Yeah, and then the Alabama National Guard was activated, and they were prepared to come into the campus, which would not have went very well because one of the leaders had said that we have been wanting to get on this campus for years, and now we got our chance. And but someone, I forget who, was able to stop that. Fortunately, because I don't know what would have happened if they had came on campus. It probably would have been a massacre. Tuskegee was what is called a land grant college, and one of the requirements of a land grant college was that all male students had to take 2 years of ROTC mandatorily. My teacher uh, was Lieutenant Colonel Carter, who was a member of the famous and renowned Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Tails. He had flown with the Tuskegee Airmen, and he was the professor of aerospace science at Tuskegee over Air Force ROTC. Um, so my first 2 years uh, was about to end, and he said, James, he said, why don't you go into advanced ROTC? He said, we'll be paying you every month. You get a additional scholarship. And I said, what do I sign? And so I signed, and had a successful career in ROTC, and the rest was history. As a colonel, I had mentors, four-star mentors. One of my mentors was the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Carnes. So if I had made any indication was interested in becoming a general, it would have happened very easily. On my Facebook page, there's a little quote, and I don't recall putting it on there, and it says, I'm me. And that's pretty much sums up my legacy. I was always me. You ask about the the racism. I can recall though that I was never called N-word. I don't know Why? Why not? Maybe I had this aura about me that things would not go well if someone called me that. So I went through nearly my entire life until a person did it. And that was a very dangerous time. Uh, 'Cause I probably would have ended up in prison if things had not changed around. Uh, in 30 years in the Air Force, I was me. I did not compromise my integrity, and I was able to look at myself every morning in the mirror and like what I saw. And despite the fact that I was interracially married, ran into a lot of racists in the Air Force, I still had a super successful career. So my legacy is I'm me.